Hello, Internet. Now I have to tweet manually like some sort of monster. Club recap. Star Wars. Republic. Come on. Cannot type. Commando. Has two M's in it. Live. Network does not have a 4 in it. Okay. It's about as much typing as I can do today, apparently. Okay, we will give it a minute here to allow some peeps to hop in. Did you finish this? How much did you play?
I think there were 3 main campaigns, right?
It seemed like it, yeah.
I got through the first 2. I got to the Kashyyyk?
The Wookiee place?
The Wookiee planet.
Wookiee town.
I got on the Wookiee planet. I don't know how far from the end I really was. When I looked at the, I guess it was that wasn't a walkthrough. It's like a wiki article, I guess, summing things up. It looked like I had maybe a couple hours yet to go, but it's hard to tell when somebody just writes out the plot. I could have had 15 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like it was only about an 8-hour game, so I think you maybe only had like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah, it wasn't much. And I just never got around to getting back to it.
Yeah. I'll talk about it.
For reasons we'll get into.
Yeah.
So did you finish?
No, actually, I'm going to get into it at the beginning, but I am unemployed, so can't afford to buy games. So I watched a Let's Play, and I was probably about 10 minutes from the end. I've been taking care of my sick and pregnant wife for most of the day. And I got about 10 minutes before the end of the Let's Play, and then you tweeted me, and I was like, oh, well, I got real close. So, yeah, we'll at least have a pretty good amount of stuff to talk about. I made a bunch of notes, so I don't want this to go... Go ahead.
I'll echo what you were just going to say. I don't want it to go super long either. I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm tired, and I had a lot going on, so I'm hoping to keep it to about an hour.
So, I would love for it to be less than that.
We'll shoot for it.
So I don't know that finishing the game would have given me any more insight into the game.
No. Yeah, I don't. It's just the same thing in a slightly different looking place. So.
Very slightly.
Very slight. A little bit more wood. Hey there, T-Bomb Rocks. Jeez. All right. I think we're about ready. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I'm chewing my
finish chowing.
Hershey Kiss. All right.
All right, you ready?
Anytime.
All right. Let's get started in 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, welcome to TVGP's Game Club for our 38th game, Star Wars Republic Commando. I am your host, Boston, filling in for the Hannah who couldn't make it this episode, but will likely be back for the next one, and joined by Nintendo 327.
Hey Boston. I believe this is the first time you and me have done something together.
I think so. I haven't had the pleasure yet, so we will put our forces together.
Pleasure. No pleasure.
Let's talk about the nominees for this month. First up was Metro Last Light, suggested by The Fred. Star Wars Republic Commando, suggested by Angel Eye. And Super Metroid, suggested by our own Nintendo 327. 3 games I've never played, so sort of win either way.
Very, very upset that we're not here talking about Super Metroid. And frankly, a little disappointed in the community.
Yeah, guys, come on.
I can see how much pull I've got, right?
Right, exactly.
Knobs games get voted in.
Yeah.
Mine, whatever.
Chopped liver. Winner by hair was Star Wars Republic Commando. Let's get our squad into position and break down the details of this game. Star Wars Republic. I know. I wrote a little script. I was very proud of myself. Star Wars Republic Commando is a squad-based first-person shooter set between the events of Star Wars Episodes 2 and Episode 3. Really hitting the high points of the Star Wars movies. Developed internally by LucasArts, rest in peace, and uses the first Unreal Engine, if you needed to know how old this game was. That's about where it is. Surprisingly, a sequel for the game was planned well ahead of production of the first one. It was going to be titled Star Wars Imperial Commando. It was based on the betrayal of Republic soldiers. Apparently, it got as far as concept paintings and was canceled. So,
which is a shame.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen where this series would have gone. Quick game synopsis from Giant Bomb. Star Wars Republic Commando players take control of Delta Squad, a group of elite clone troopers, and complete the tactical behind-the-scenes dirty work of the Republic in their fight against the Separatist forces. Also known as Star Wars, I guess.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Actually, prequel Star Wars.
That's true. Yeah, a bunch of clones, bunch of robots that roll around. You know, all the standard stuff you have. Let's hit our time travel here from February 2005, March for the PC version. Reception, the reviews were overall pretty positive. They were in the 7, 8, 9 sort of range. Almost all of them criticized the short length and underwhelming multiplayer, which seems pretty fair.
We didn't get to test out because it isn't sort of Xbox Live supported anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That Xbox Live has been retired.
Although, is the PC version still online?
You know, I wonder if it used GameSpy. That seems like around the era that it was said, oh, we're powered by GameSpy, and that's also dead. So maybe it. When I looked at the multiplayer, because so many reviews were kind of poo-pooing it, apparently it was just like deathmatch and capture the flag. Like those were the only real two modes. So that sort of makes sense. Metacritic overall gave it a 78%. EGM, I wanted to include this because it gave it a 7.33 out of 10, which is incredible. GameSpot gave it an 8.7. They said a pedestrian and unimaginative multiplayer mode is the only notable flaw in a game that otherwise plays, looks, and sounds fantastic. GameSpy gave it a 4 out of 5, saying even though there are no Jedis to be seen, the Force is strong in this stylish tactical shooter.
It's really kind of crazy that there are no Jedis in this game, and yet it feels very Star Wars.
Yeah, they did a really good job of... it's almost kind of nice that it wasn't, you know, the final boss isn't Obi-Wan or anything. You know, it really is this... You know, this one of the descriptions says it's really this behind-the-scenes kind of wet work thing. You're not really fighting. You're not running into Anakin and you know, cutting him down.
Which is one of the things that I actually really liked about it. Now, I guess we'll just kind of jump around a little, maybe.
Sure, yeah.
But one of the comments I was going to make is how much how refreshing it was that this game didn't throw in a bunch of unnecessary cameos.
Yeah, yeah.
Admittedly, didn't finish it, but I didn't come across. Oh, here comes Darth Vader. Right. And there's Emperor Palpatine, and you know, like all of these shoehorned mechanics to get you to recognize people in the universe.
Yeah, I forgot for us to cover it. Nintendo said he got probably about 2 out of the 3 acts. It's sort of separated into 3 acts, with a little bit of time in between each one. I am unemployed and am not buying video games, so I watched a Let's Play. And I watched all but the last 10 minutes of it because I waited until the very last minute to start it. Unfortunately for sales, there were no sales numbers ever released. So it sort of seems like...
There were.
I couldn't find...
I put them in my thread.
Oh, okay.
If you want to stall, I'll go dig it up.
I'll help dig it up while we're here. I think sort of colloquially when we look at Republic Commando, I think amongst my group of friends, almost everybody owned this because it was
really?
It was, yeah, I think for a lot of us it was sort of like, well, it's Star Wars and it's squad based, it's all really great. Your sales units in millions, it says it sold about 0.72 million total units. Looks like worldwide, so didn't do very well. Even for the sort of the
I don't know how to gauge what are we talking, 2005 4 or 5? Yeah. I don't know how to gauge sales numbers from back then.
I think if you look at, I think probably around that time the first Halo game would have been the high watermark, and I think that sold something like 3 million to 5 million copies.
So to talk about these sales numbers a little bit though, if your high watermark is the first Halo at 3 to 4 million, this is only released on a console that basically came in third place, right? That console cycle. The original Xbox was, I mean, you sold almost a quarter of the copies that Halo did.
So I just looked up Halo
I don't know what
sales.
your expectations are.
I looked up Halo's estimated sales numbers. It looks like it sold an estimated 10.5 million copies. So,
okay.
Launching on the same platform that Halo did, I think you can look at this game and say 1 million probably would have been pretty good. But less than that, I think it makes a lot of sense why that might have been canceled. The sequel might have been canceled.
But I don't know. You're launching a game. It does have Star Wars in the title, but it doesn't have anybody on the cover.
Right,
it
has like some masked dudes.
Yeah, you have clone troopers, which don't even have outwardly expressive personalities.
Yeah, and this is unfortunately before the first Call of Duty Modern Warfare, where they started really focusing on having, Soap and all these people that are characters in the squad that you sort of carry throughout the whole story. And I feel like in a lot of ways this game was, and we'll probably talk about it more in a little bit, but probably a little bit ahead of its time in a couple of respects.
I think so. Which is why I say the sequel was a shame. I would almost like to see the evolution of this game.
Mm-hmm.
I almost would like to play the evolution of this game. Something
exactly.
with a little better first-person shooting, something with a little more, not more Star Wars, but a little more relevant Star Wars lore.
Yeah, like maybe
we can touch on that in a little bit too. But
yeah,
the prequel trilogy is not like the strongest Star Wars universe, right?
Yeah, that's true. So let's talk about the peers for this game, January through March 2005. There were a ton of games released during these months, which is probably also why this game had a little bit of trouble sales-wise.
Yeah.
Additionally, the PSP was launched in March 2005 in the US, so we're just going to hit on the highlights because there were a lot of games. Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap came out. Mercenaries Playground of Destruction came out, which probably on the Xbox stole some of these sales numbers. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, Star Wars KOTOR 2 came out on PC, which probably hurt this a little bit. Gran Turismo 4, Devil May Cry 3, Phantom Dust, and God of War. So if you had a PS2, you were probably playing that instead of virtually anything else.
Yeah.
So, and every month we asked top of the pile or overlooked. I sort of considered it middle to nearing the top of the pile. It got really good reviews. I knew a lot of people that picked it up and liked it, but it never really gained traction.
I did not know anything about this game.
Okay.
I would have said it was overlooked.
Mm.
I had no idea that this thing existed until we decided to make a thread about it and play it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those games I think that was reviewed really, really well, and everyone was saying, hey, you should go get this. It's a really solid game. And then nobody bought it for whatever reason. Which
is, to me, the perfect Game Club game.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it's also pretty good because nobody owned an original Xbox, so...
I was going to mention that.
Right.
I played this game on the original Xbox.
Oh, nice. You hooked up the old beast?
I did. And it required a little bit of Googling.
Okay.
Because, believe it or not, the connections for the original Xbox are not coming standard on your high-definition televisions these days.
Ah, right.
So it turns out that if you are in a pinch, you can plug that yellow cable. If you remember the 3, yellow, white, and red,
yep,
you can plug that yellow cable into your component green port, and it will give you...
I did not know
give
that.
you a picture. I didn't either until I hit the Google
more
machine.
You know. All right, well, let's get into the real meat of the episode now that we've sort of set up what this game is. Let's talk about sort of general gameplay, what we liked. Let me pull up my notes here. What sort of fit your fancy about Star Wars Republic Commando there, Nintendo?
Oh man, I hate to delve us back into the way this thing used to go, but my like list is a lot shorter than my don't like list.
Okay, I'm the reverse, so we'll balance each other out.
I guess what I liked about it was that we had a nice Star Wars game that didn't, and we've talked about this just a second ago, but it didn't rely on any of that. This is Luke Skywalker.
Right.
And here's all of these people that you know. It felt like you were part of the Star Wars universe. It was definitely a Star Wars game.
Yeah.
Without being that big headlining Star Wars. So
Right.
that was refreshing and fun and different. I liked that part a lot. I also liked, and this is sort of which side are we on? Are we good
the
guys?
bad guys.
Are we bad guys?
Yeah, because we're part of the clone
guys.
army, so I think you're part of the Empire.
But that whole thing gets so muddled for me because I'm not such a huge uber nerd about the prequels. You start out, the clone army starts out being quote unquote good guys, right?
Oh man, you're digging into some cobwebs about the prequel trilogy.
Well, we see the clone army fighting alongside Yoda and Mace Windu, so that would imply that they are sort of on the side of good, and then eventually they kind of get turned. But maybe this is beyond this.
Yeah, I think it said it's between episodes 2 and 3, so I'm thinking it's part of maybe the downfall, or like it's sort of traversing that time period where they're moving from one side to the other. Because
right.
I think that is one of the more interesting parts of this game is you're not going around and kicking babies or anything. It's not very much like you're on the dark side. It's very much like you are here as part of a squad to do a job, and you're the good guys and they're the bad guys, no matter which part of the movie sides that you're on.
Right. It felt like that too, playing the game. I was never quite sure if I was in the wrong or the right when I was doing things. And I hope that was by design.
Right.
And I feel like a little bit of it was because that universe kind of gets so muddled right at this time. The Star Wars timeline right here sort of, to me, gets very uncertain.
Yeah.
It's not as clear as Darth Vader bad, Luke Skywalker good.
Right. Red lightsaber's bad, blue one's good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that, and at the same time, it made it difficult to understand what I was doing and how it fit into something larger, and if I was being heroic or not.
Yeah, like there was one part of what I was watching was they were saying, well, we need to go storm the ship, and we need to go shut it down and destroy all these robots, and we need to get like these launch codes, and I'm like, great, but for what? Like, I know you're just kind of wet works and someone is just giving you orders and you're just going to do them, but you're also destroying these super droids that I thought would be on your side, so I'm not entirely sure who's fighting for who.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite sure, that scene in particular where that's like the second act of the game where you're going through the ship and it's like, why am I doing this? And admittedly, some of the cutscenes and stuff, I had things happening. I wasn't able to devote my entire attention when a cutscene came on. So maybe it's one of those things that's easily explainable if I had sat down and watched the cutscene.
Yeah. Well, and then in the third act, you're on Kashyyyk and you're defending and escorting Wookiees. So, it's all over the place.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. You kind of go from this good guy, but you're sort of a bad guy. You look like a bad guy.
Right.
Type of thing. I don't know. I feel like I've beaten that horse a little bit.
It's at least interesting.
So the opening, I'm trying to really remember what the opening set piece was. That was the one where you're kind of walking through the crater on like a planet, I think.
Yeah, it's the very beginning is, you're a clone baby and you're going through clone baby training. Yeah. And then your first mission, I think, is going through that crater, or that's like one of the set pieces in that first act.
So what I thought was interesting is for a game this old, it had a pretty good in-game tutorial.
Yeah.
Even though I acquired the game on the original Xbox, I didn't get the manual or anything, and I was really expecting, because it was so old, to have to go out and find a manual.
Yeah, you're almost expecting it to just dump you in the game and say, all right, good luck. Yeah.
And I was so happy to see that did not happen.
Yeah.
They actually had what I would consider a more modern take on gaming, right? Which is where you don't even need a manual. It will teach you everything in the game as you go. And it did a great job, I thought, basically giving you something, here's this thing to do and learn, and then testing you. And then doing what a tutorial should do is not only do that, but actually make it somewhat entertaining, right? It never felt to me like, oh, I could just get past this opening 10 minutes.
Right.
But I mean, I felt like the game had started. I felt like we were doing the game.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it was teaching me.
Well, and it also, interestingly, I was sort of surprised at, for this age, for how old this game is, they had a bunch of on-screen hints that would pop up, and it would pause the game and have a whole bunch of text. And I was really surprised that it had an option of continue or continue without hints. You could just turn them off completely for the rest of the game. And that's sort of unexpected for me for a game that old, where it's like, no, you're going to get the hints, and you're going to get them for the whole game, no matter if you've played this for the first or the fifth time.
Yeah, we're talking about things that are ahead of its time. I don't know if I'm just misremembering what 2005 was like, but when I think about to the Xbox One and the PS2 and the GameCube, I don't think that sort of convention, a sort of game design.
Right.
I expect either no hints, or I expect very heavy-handed, we will hint you.
Right. Whether you want it to or not.
Yes, here's a hint.
Right.
So I was actually really pleased with the opening hour or so of gameplay. They did a nice job of, I guess, a nice job, but it's a trope in a way. You've got a squad of 4 people that the game kind of revolves around, right? You're the commander of 3 other guys, but they split you up at the beginning, and you kind of just absorb everybody one by one.
Yeah. Well,
and I will say...
Go ahead.
What was your experience when it came to those 3 other people watching the game? Because playing the game, I never felt like anybody had any individual personality.
That's interesting, because I feel like watching it, you were able to absorb it a little bit more. Like, each one of these, like, Scorch is the crazy guy, and Seb, I don't remember which his name is.
Seb, I think, yeah.
He's a little bit more, down earth. He's a snipery dude. And I think the thing that, even watching it a little bit, because this game is kind of fast-paced, and there's always a ton of droids coming in at you, and there's always stuff blowing up, and it's very busy. The squad chatter between each other gets lost a lot.
Absolutely.
And I feel like if you're able to kind of turn down the sound effects and turn down the music a little bit and turn up that stuff, there's a lot of chatter happening between the squad, and it was almost stereotypical, but I can kind of, give it a pass for being 11 years old, where it was, a little bit like, oh, the squad never really gets along with each other, not to the point of, Spec Ops: The Line or anything, but, there's always this static, and there's always, sort of friendly ribbing between all of them, and it's sort of a shame that got kind of lost in the audio mix.
It's tough. I understand what you're touching at, and I wish I could have felt that more as I'm playing the game.
Yeah.
It was just, there's so much happening. Enemies are shooting at you. You're trying to find ammunition. You're trying to find a revive. Too much is going on to pick up the little nuances and the quirks and the dialogue.
And it seemed
like I said...
Whoops, sorry.
Maybe I was going to say maybe they fleshed that out in the cutscenes more.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It's different when it's a movie cutscene type of thing,
right,
as opposed to the dialogue and the chatter they'll give you in the game. And one thing I thought that maybe they missed on was there are certain points in the world where you can go up to it, and there's like this holographic image of a trooper.
Mm-hmm.
And you can command one of your guys to take position behind a piece of cover, and then they'll snipe. Or you can tell somebody to set a bomb on a door. What I thought they missed on was using those set pieces to flesh out the personalities of the people and to make the game more strategic.
Right.
The game is tough because it's so fast. Everything is happening so quickly, and it's a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
But it wants you to use elements of strategy involved, and it's tough to make that seamless, and I don't think it did that very well.
Yeah, I feel like it does, around the squad-based stuff, it does some stuff really well, and it does some stuff really poorly, because it seemed like the game at certain points was just dumping enemies at you sort of non-stop until you go hack something or you go blow up a door or something like that. And
you touched on one of my big criticisms right here.
Yeah, and I feel like, to your point, I feel like you're absolutely right, where the game wants to say, all right, well, clearly enemies are going to be coming at you down this hallway. We want to have somebody sniping behind here. We want to have somebody over here behind cover sort of assisting you, and you and another guy will sort of rush towards, but you have these
Go
guys...
hack the computer that turns off the turrets, which allows you to move forward.
Right, and then, like, as you start... I feel like the squad command stuff was always really good, because I played this back in the day, and I felt like it was always really good. It wouldn't really fly today because it's just one button for everything. It's, point at this thing and the right guy goes to this thing, or point at the health, the Bacta, and this guy goes over and heals himself. That works pretty well, but I absolutely agree with you. It felt, even watching it, it felt too often like, all right, we're going to set up. Nope, droid's on top of us. Let's just start shooting. And hopefully everybody makes it out.
Yeah, that's where I feel like I guess what I stumbled through there is sort of kind of what you were saying, is they could have had these great moments of, like, here's a stretch where you're just first-person shooting. You're dooming. You're blasting what's in front of you, and you're making your way down the hallway, and you find a key, and you get to a door. And then maybe you could have a set piece right after that where it's strategy, where you need to have the right guy in the right position to provide you cover so that the other guy can then maybe advance, and then you get him in the position so then you can go get to the door.
Right.
Like, that would be an awesome way to sort of orchestrate the game. But I feel like the game really was trying to do something like that, only it didn't get out of its own way when it was throwing endless waves of enemies at you.
Yeah, I almost wanted it to be more like what Rainbow Six Vegas did, where it's like, all right, we have to go through this door, you're going to set up here, you're going to get up here and do this thing, and you start the encounter by breaching the door, which there was that sort of setup on a lot of these encounters where you could say, I have a whole squad, I'm going to get everybody set up, and then initiate, breaching this door, and then that's when it starts. But too often it just kind of went off the rails without you really doing anything pretty immediately.
Yeah. And once it goes off the rails, it stays off.
Yeah.
There's no... one of the things that I learned very early on, so this is the first sort of act, you get through the canyon area at the beginning, and you get into like an underground area.
Mm-hmm.
There is a section where it sort of choke points you across a bridge. What they don't tell you is that the enemies will not stop coming until you get across the bridge. And I got almost to the point where I had to either restart or call it quits for this game.
Right.
Because the other criticism I can level at it is it has that old Halo checkpoint system.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it had checkpointed me in a position that was very unfavorable. Several guys were either down or almost dead.
Right.
And I'm having to you revive a guy, he gets up, but he's only at half health, and then by the time you get over... Anyway, what I'm saying is, it was at that point very early on in the game I discovered that if I just, I don't pick anybody up, I just blast my way through these 3 enemies and make it across the bridge, the game goes, and stops spawning enemies.
Oh.
Then I can go back, I can pick my guys up, and we can move forward.
Jeez. Yeah,
so that strategy played in, though, later in the game. There were several points where that's the case.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was really interesting about the game, that, to your point, I absolutely agree, where it's kind of both sides of the coin. It's a really great thing and it's a really bad thing, where you have 4 guys. So if you go down, it's not game over. You can send a command and say, hey, somebody needs to come over and revive me. You're sort of down but not out, like Gears did, but without the bleed out sort of thing. And I thought that was really good, because a lot of games would just say, all right, the commander went down, game is over. But you still had some options. But I think especially, I even in the video I watched, the guy that was playing it had a ton of problems at that point. And later in the game, there's the exits to the level have these like racing arrows pointing to it. A lot of times he was just booking it out the door, because you didn't need to kill every enemy. You just run in there and it would just send you to the next level. I feel like the incapacitation and reviving thing worked really well until in the second act, and I think it might have done it in the first act too, where it splits up the squad, and immediately as soon as you go down, you can't get revived and your game is over. So, like, it sort of took that squad the benefits of the squad and the interesting parts about that, and immediately ripped all that stuff out for a pretty good amount of time.
I want to say that was probably for the sake of variety and gameplay, right? The game felt samey enough as it is.
Yeah.
So putting these little things where you do conventional things, you split the squad up.
Right. It's the sort of stuff Gears did, where it's like, oh, I'm way up here and we're way down here, Yeah.
The one thing about the revives that was frustrating at times, and I don't have any really bad things to say about the revive system. It really was, again, I thought a bit ahead of its time. I don't remember a game of that era even having anything like this.
Yeah,
but
not
one
off the
thing
top
that
of my
was
head.
sort of frustrating is you would find yourself in a position that you inadvertently shouldn't have been in. A big, strong enemy takes you down, right? Well, if you call your guy over to heal you, he'll come running over.
Yeah.
And then the enemy is still there.
Right.
And so there were numerous times where I get sort of the footsteps, and you could kind of see the squad mate picking you up. And you'd see his health go, whoosh, and he'd be down.
Right.
And then somebody else would come over.
Right.
So there were a number of occasions. Yeah, there were a number of occasions where I watched everybody die that way. And I was like, well, I need really a way to tell them, take everybody out. Right. And then come pick me up.
Yeah, a lot of times your squad is pretty smart. Like when you send them to go get back to heal their health, the person with the lowest health is usually going to go first, and they sort of do it in order. And
No, they don't.
Oh.
They do it in order, yes. The lowest person with the health goes and gets it. But one of my other complaints was there was no way to tell all of them to go. So I found myself wasting a lot of time standing at like a Bacta unit saying heal. And then somebody comes running over, and they do the heal.
You're just hanging out.
And then they run away, and then I have to go heal. And then the other guy comes running over. Like, there was no way to tell all of them
heal
to go heal, or when this guy's done, go heal. Which is why I say it's a shame a sequel didn't come out, because I think these are things that they would have iterated on. And I think you would have had sort of like a Final Fantasy 12 type of. You could almost put in that sort of chain system of, well, when I hit the heal button, the guy with the lowest health goes.
You start making your macros.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing that I would have really liked to have seen out of this game, if there were sequels, is, if it made it later in the Xbox, the original Xbox's life cycle, and hopefully would have made it to the Xbox 360's life cycle, I would have really loved to have seen it jump on that drop-in, drop-out co-op gameplay that a lot of 360 games made. Because, man, this is... commanding your unit works really well, but, man, I couldn't imagine how fun that game would be if it's just you and 3 friends just going through similar-looking environments. Yeah, it's a little bit of a pretty inexpensively made game, but... playing through that with 3 friends would be really great.
Yep. Absolutely was on my list of things that again, ahead of its time a little bit, perhaps.
Yep.
The technology just was not there to make that happen.
Yeah.
But, man, this would be a great co-op game.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if there's anything else on my... one of the small effects that I really liked in the game was when you got gunk on your face mask, and it did like that like light swoop that it did to clear your mask. Little touches like that were pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the whole HUD interface in itself. What game am I thinking of that does this? Metroid Prime. The way you had sort of some toggles in your visor where you could go to a low light mode, which I didn't think they utilized unless that happened a lot in the third act.
It didn't really seem like it.
Third act. It didn't get utilized the way I thought it was going to. There was one section on a ship in the second act where you got dumped into a dark area and you had to turn your low light level visor on.
Yeah.
And that was really cool that it sort of lit up all these things that were sort of invisible. And the problem I had, though, was that they never told me I could turn it back off. So I did a great chunk of the level with this low light on, and everything is washed out, and it never dawned on me to check to see that it was lit up again.
Right.
Somewhere along the line, it had gotten lit up, and I didn't know it.
Right.
But I really like those different sort of visor options.
Yeah.
Again, sequel territory, they could have iterated on that even further, and who knows what we would have gotten.
Yeah. We've sort of been talking about good and bad stuff, so we'll kind of continue to. I think the only other, obviously the game is fairly short. It seems to be a 6 to 8 hour experience, which is okay. I think by the time it was over, I think nowadays it's probably overstaying its welcome a little bit, sort of graphically and environment wise. I think the only other criticism that I had that was fairly big is even on the easier difficulties, it seemed like almost every enemy was a bullet sponge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's especially when you run into like 2 of those super droids, you're just dumping clips and throwing grenades at these guys.
Those guys were tough. The game allows you like sort of a targeted lock-on with your squad, a real quick way to say target this specific enemy, and that's how you had to take those super trooper guys down, right?
Right.
Target them and then conjoin fire, which was again, I think ahead of its time. I can't think of a game in 2005 that was doing something like this.
No, yeah.
But that was super cool to be able to feel like your squad was contributing. It was one of the moments where the game really made you feel like you were not alone.
Right.
And the frustrating thing about those guys was they just took too many shots, way too many shots.
Yeah. And it almost...
But there were...
It almost seems like that was maybe because of the game's length. They were sort of artificially padding it, but it seemed, even just watching it, it seemed really frustrating.
Yeah. The one comment I was going to make was there were things that made me maybe question whether I was using the best strategy for situations. It got to feel like in the second act when you're on the ship is where I sort of really got into the groove of the game, and I started really feeling things. This may seem a little obvious now, but I didn't realize that you could sort of pick up weapons off the enemies.
They didn't make it very obvious at all.
One of the frustrations I had was I was constantly low on ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going from cache to cache that they provide you.
Yeah.
Well, that's not really the way I don't think you're supposed to do it. I think you're supposed to pick up the weapons that the enemies are dropping because there's far more of those in each level.
Yeah.
And it clicked in the second act because you fight these little, what are they, crocodile-looking things.
Yeah.
That run around with shotguns. Well, shotguns decimate those guys.
Yeah.
Like one-hit kills. But your main blaster weapons take forever to get rid of them. And the same goes for the rolly droids that you see in episode 1.
Yeah.
I think they're called droid dickas in episode 1. Well, if you just try to shoot them with their shield generator up, it takes forever. Mm-hmm. But if you drop like an ion grenade or something at them and take their shields off, they go down pretty quickly.
Right.
And so I was like, man, this game's got a lot of cool depth to it.
Yeah. Yeah, especially for the time period, because I think that was something that I feel like a lot of people gravitated towards with Halo, was a similar thing where there's a lot of weapons and they all have different abilities and they all have different stats, and there was enough variety where it wasn't, it wasn't an older game where it's just, well, the shotgun is stronger than the pistol, but the rocket launcher is stronger than, you had a little bit more variety, and you had an opportunity to use these different tools in different ways against different enemies, and I feel like that was another thing. We keep saying it, but it's another thing where this game was a little bit ahead of its time.
I think it's a few years ahead, and if we had seen this game in the Xbox 360 era, it may have been a completely different experience.
Yeah.
For the better. It may have gone way better.
Yeah, because there was a reason why Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2 were so popular on 360s, because it seemed to take all these parts that Republic Commando was trying to do and sort of firmed them up and put a solid foundation in there. And I think if it had made it that far, it probably would have been it probably would have been the thing where it's like, yeah, it's the third part in a game, in a series, but let's maybe skip the first one. It's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your comparisons with Halo are actually spot on too. That's one thing I wanted to mention. Is this game really feels like it took a lot of inspiration out of Halo. Mm-hmm. The level design to me felt very similar.
Yeah.
The way the enemies sort of behaved, the way the game sort of flowed, the ship reminded me so much of that library from Halo.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was endless at times. It felt endless at times.
Yeah.
Corridor after corridor.
A lot of doors that don't open.
Which is a huge frustration. I complained about that in one of the other games we played.
Yeah.
If you do that, that's fine. If you want to make the game feel like it's bigger than it really is, and you want to put fake doors in, that's fine. But don't make the fake doors look identical to real doors.
Right.
Because I don't know what's a real door.
There's this, there's been so much work done in the last decade about really subliminal level design where it's like, all right, the doors you can't open don't have a light above them, but the one you do
Correct.
has a lit corridor and there's a light above it and it's flashing. That's when you can tell this game is a little bit old, because it's like, here's a corridor of 18 doors. Which one do you need? It's like, this is terrible.
It's always the one at the end of the hallway. It's intuitive.
Yeah.
But when you get turned around or something in a level, yeah, you're walking up to things that don't open.
Yeah.
Should it open?
Is there cool stuff behind there? I don't even know. So I think we've. Do you have anything else for sort of stuff you liked, stuff you didn't like? I think I've gone through my entire list here.
I want to say that the first act was sort of just mundane and typical, sort of bland. The second act, even though I complained about the long corridors and stuff on the ship, was a lot of fun. I think it culminated with this sequence at the end where you're in a hangar, you're in several hangars, and there's sort of these incoming ships, and there are droid pods. It's sort of like a Last Stand Horde type of thing.
Yeah.
Loved that section a lot.
It felt like it would be in one of the Star Wars movies.
It did. It felt Star Wars. It was just fun to play through. I never really got to the point where I was like, man, this is a squad game.
Right.
There were only those flashes when you're taking on a particularly big or tough enemy where you had to target it and tell everybody else to shoot at it, that I ever felt like I was sort of with anybody else, really with anybody else.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess that's my take.
Yeah. Anything else you have for our other segments here? I feel like we probably covered most of these, like good lines, great moments, weird stuff that happened. I felt like we sort of touched on most of those.
We did. It's a shame. I kind of wish I could go back and give it another go, almost. Now that I know what's coming up and what the levels are looking like and expecting of me and things like that, I'm not focused so much on the levels. I wish I could go back and give it another go so that I could hear the dialogue.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of dialogue that I think fleshes out these individual characters a little bit that just I'm too busy focusing on how to get to the end.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a ton of great lines. In fact, there's a lot of witty quips. Things like when you're trying to tell a squad mate to do something, the way they refer to you as commander and stuff. I do remember there being, I should have written them down. I do remember there being some funny quips about, like particularly when you go down and they have to pick you up, they give you crap for that.
Yeah, and some of the stuff, at the beginning of levels or acts, there is your holographic commander guy that everybody's talking to. At the beginning of the second one, I think it is, your commander says, well, you're going to go in here and you're going to go do this thing, just the four of you. And one of your squad mates says, respectfully, I think this is a trap, sir. And he goes,
yeah.
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. That's pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of Star Wars Republic Commando. It's kind of a game out of time in sort of good and bad ways.
It to me is the perfect game. It's the game to point to when you say ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, ahead of its time almost makes it feel like that it's doing things that underappreciated at the time.
Right.
I don't feel like they were underappreciated. I just feel like they were not implemented to their fullest extents.
Right. Yeah, when you look at stuff like Halo and you look at one of its contemporaries, God of War, I think you look at both of those games and say, wow, these are spectacle games. They're doing something big and they're doing something different. And you look at Republic Commando and it's a game about a squad of 4 doing wetworks jobs that aren't the heroes of Star Wars and never run into the Millennium Falcon or anything. It's a quieter game that I think maybe would do a lot better nowadays, but back then was probably, everyone was looking at it as like, that's a Star Wars game? I mean, I guess. I don't know those dudes.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening and watching. The voting thread is, or the voting is out right now for the next series of games. It's open until Sunday of this week, so go check it out. Your vote counts. This game only won by, I think, 2 votes or something like that.
Yep. In the last couple of elections, shall we say, since we're in that time of year.
Yeah.
Like 1 vote separated them, and I think we had to literally flip a coin.
Yep.
Because they were tied. So, absolutely, your vote matters.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you very much for listening and watching. You can visit us at tvgp.tv. Go vote for the next game. Thank you, Nintendo, for joining me for our double action episode here. And hopefully the Hannah will be back with us next month, and we'll see you again. Bye.
Bye.
All right, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining us live. Always appreciate everyone coming out.
Anybody show up?
Yeah, we got a couple peeps. T-Bomb Rocks let us know, and I totally missed it that the PC version apparently still has online, so if you want to go play that, I guess, if you really want. All right, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next month. Bye.